Hey guys, Bobby here from Wedding Film School, a channel dedicated to educating and inspiring wedding filmmakers. And we are just a few hours removed from arguably the biggest Canon announcement in years, the all-new Canon EOS R5. And in my opinion, what might end up being an even more important announcement for wedding filmmakers, the EOS R6. I want to go in depth on some of the specs that are most important for wedding filmmakers, but if you're just looking for a quick overview of the new Canon R5 and R6, they are pretty much everything that we've been wanting from a camera for years and then some. So let's start with the R5. It is a full frame mirrorless camera that shoots up to 8K 10-bit raw footage uncropped and also features in-body image stabilization for the first time in a Canon camera. And of course, this is all on top of the stellar performance history, top-notch autofocus, and color science that Canon has offered for years. And you can have all of this and more at a price point of $38.99. The R6 holds its own as well, offering 4K 60 10-bit video uncropped, and also gives you the same IBIS and the same autofocus that you'll find in the R5 at a price point of $24.99. And an often overlooked but important feature, both of these new camera bodies are weather sealed. So there's your brief rundown, but now let's dive in. And we are first going to focus on the new Canon R5. If you are like me, you have been waiting for this camera for years. I moved away from Canon a handful of years ago, and despite looking for every reason to come back, they just never wowed me with any releases until this. First and foremost, the R5 will have IBIS, and I expect it to be competitive with other leaders in the industry. As I mentioned, this is the first Canon camera that features internal body stabilization, and that is a huge step forward for Canon, especially for wedding filmmakers. I don't think I can say that this replaces a gimbal or tripod in all scenarios, but I do think this makes shooting handheld much more achievable. I'm a stickler for smooth motion, and I don't love slow motion footage in my wedding films all too often, and that means that I avoid shooting handheld at pretty much all costs. While other stabilizations from other manufacturers have been nice, Panasonic is really the only one that I found to be at the level I needed to trust some handheld shots. And I think from what I've seen, this will be competitive, if not better, on the Canon cameras. This is incredibly important for wedding filmmakers as you're able to keep your footprint on the day even smaller. Of course, you'll still need tripods or gimbals or whatever support gear here and there, but this will open plenty of opportunities to grab handheld shots, and when shooting handheld, you can often work more quickly and efficiently. The R5 can shoot up to 8K 10-bit 30p footage raw, but also offers an array of other shooting options, including 4K 422 10-bit footage at 120 frames per second, and I was shocked to hear that these would be uncropped, utilizing the full width of the sensor. Now these are some crazy specs, but let's think about what wedding filmmakers will use most. This will vary by person, but realistically, we're not going to be shooting 8K. I can see some people making use of the 4K 120, but most likely the majority will be using 4K 60 or something around there. But having that beautiful sensor will certainly help your image, and with all the information that comes with 422 10-bit and the ability to shoot RAW or C-Log, you'll be able to push this footage pretty far. As with other Canon cameras before it, the R5 features dual pixel autofocus, which is the best autofocus system from any camera manufacturer currently on the market. And it adds eye detection as well. This is an amazing yet sometimes overlooked feature for wedding filmmakers. I am a huge advocate for knowing how to manually focus, and a good portion of my films don't use autofocus at all, but that doesn't mean there aren't times where it can come in clutch. I immediately think of the ability to leave cameras unattended during parts of the day like ceremony or speeches, and trust that this highly advanced autofocus system is going to nail focus, especially if you're a solo shooter running multiple cameras, or throwing one of these cameras on a gimbal where pulling focus manually isn't always an option, and trusting the AF system there as well. Additionally, the autofocus system that I've experienced even on the previous EOS R allowed me to shoot at a much shallower depth of field than I expected in some of these scenarios and still maintain focus. It will feature a dual card slot, one for CF Express cards and the other for SD cards, and presumably the higher quality modes will be relegated to using the CF Express slot exclusively. It also clearly has a flip out screen, which is always a nice feature, And the R5 will work with Canon EF lenses with an adapter, of which there are a few options, the cheapest one I believe being around $100. And of course it is designed to work with their newer lineup of RF lenses. And this is great as so many people, myself included, are already invested in EF glass, which is readily available and has a wide price range. And of course the new RF lineup is top notch, which is a great option if you have the money. So when I think of filming a wedding and what I'm looking for, I really believe this checks all of the major boxes to create the best film possible, while honestly adding multiple boxes that I didn't even know I wanted. The high resolution allows you to capture a beautiful image or to crop in and reframe as needed in post. I already do that plenty with 4K footage, and while I don't anticipate shooting 8K for the most part, the ability is there, which would give you seemingly endless reframing options. 4K frame rate options allow you to go even slower than you probably need to, like 120 frames per second can be slowed down to 20%, which is usually too slow for a wedding film in my opinion. The IBIS allows you to shoot handheld if need be. Dual pixel autofocus is the best autofocus on the market, and the 422 10-bit RAW allows you to do as much as you need to in post. And real quick, in the announcement, they actually talked and commented about 10-bit, but the video reveal did say 12-bit, so perhaps in certain modes you'll be at 12-bit, I'm not really sure there. And to add to that, you get Canon's amazing color science, all packed into a small, relatively lightweight body. So how does this new R5 stack up against competitors, and why might you choose this over some other options on the market? It's an important question. The reality is that when everything is taken into consideration, it's hard to say that anything truly beats the R5 outside of the fact that cameras currently available have stood the test of time to some extent. At the moment, Sony is still stuck on the a7 III or the a7S II, kind of wherever you're at. And while many are anticipating an a7S III announcement, myself included, we've been waiting forever for that camera, and it may be time to make the switch if this checks all the boxes for you. On the Panasonic side is the S1H, which definitely competes with this in some ways, but there are a few areas where it falls short, including not being able to shoot 422 10-bit above 4K, and the autofocus, while improved, is not on the same level as what Canon cameras are offering. Also, the S1H is about $200 more than the R5 currently. And of course, keep in mind all of this info is really only the highlights and only focusing on the video side of things. This is a killer photo camera as well, with many top-end features. The Canon R5 is announced at $3899, which isn't a small number to be sure. So let's take a look at what you could pair with this camera as a B or C camera to save some money. Lucky for us, Canon also announced the R6, which is overshadowed by the R5 despite being an extremely capable camera in itself, and in some ways I think might even be more important of an announcement. I mentioned a brief overview before, but the main differences between the R5 and the R6 are that in the R6 you are limited to 4K 60 at 422 10-bit internally, not RAW, though it still shoots C-Log and can do 120 frames per second at 1080. It has less megapixels at 20 on the R6 compared to 45 on the R5, though if you aren't doing large prints or things like that, you should be just fine. And the R6 utilizes 2 SD card slots instead of a CF Express slot, as you won't need the speeds that enables. There are some physical differences as well. The R6 does not have a screen on the top, the rear screen is slightly smaller, and the electronic viewfinder is slightly less detailed comparatively, but still plenty good. And while I don't want to get into lens recommendations in this video, if you're on the lookout for lenses at a variety of different price points, you can check out our kit link in the description below. Now, this wouldn't be a fair video without talking about the drawbacks, and I have to do this all on speculation as I haven't spent time with the R5 or R6 yet. One thing right off the bat is the need to purchase an adapter in order to use EF lenses. I understand why this is the case, I'm glad they offer it, and from what I see the adapter will work seamlessly with EF lenses, but I still don't like having to shell out even more money for an already expensive camera. Of course, another drawback of this camera, which is inherent in all DSLR mirrorless cameras, is the lack of some cinema features such as XLR inputs, built-in ND filters, and things of that nature. But if you've been shooting DSLR or mirrorless already, this won't be a deal breaker for you. And of course, you can always use your own ND filters. Also, along with the insane power this thing is packing, in order to shoot some of the top quality options that the R5 offers, you're gonna need fast cards and lots of space. This is to be expected and is part of the game when shooting 4K, 6K, or 8K, but it's always good to think about all the variables of your workflow before moving forward with a large purchase. And of course, you can work with proxies to help out. And lastly, perhaps my biggest gripe is actually that it appears neither the R5 or 6 will dual record video to both card slots. All in all, to say I'm excited for this camera would probably be an understatement. This is essentially what I've been waiting for ever since leaving Canon, especially because we still shoot Canon for the photography side of our business. I already pre-ordered an R6 as I think that offers me everything that I would realistically use on a day-to-day basis. I'm still plenty tempted by the R5 as well and could definitely see myself picking one up. I think this is a great move for Canon and great news for the wedding filmmaking industry as a whole. In my mind, Canon has reclaimed the throne of actually pushing the limits with their cameras and is seemingly giving us everything we could want. This should only benefit us even if you don't plan to pick up the R5 or the R6, as it's going to put a lot of pressure on other manufacturers like Sony and Panasonic to match or exceed the offerings of this camera. And as far as release dates goes, I didn't see anything confirmed in the presentation, but from what I'm reading online, we expect to see the R5 at the end of July and the R6 at the end of August, but both are available right now to pre-order, and you can find links in the description below. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What are you most excited for? Do you plan to pick one up? And are you planning on switching from a different camera brand? If you have any questions, please leave those below in the comments as well. And as always, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.